What's up? Stand up. Stand up for stand up. Right? Get it? I don't know. So I'm still back on Chappelle. So this is my Chappelle video for you guys. Um, I really appreciated your um, cooperating with the whole sort of like posting your notes while you're watching thing. So I thought I went through all your comments and I appreciate, you know, all of them. I have so much that I want to get to here. I don't want to make this video too long, but um, I'm just tinkering with some format issues or ideas for the class in the future. I'm thinking about keeping some of the online components because not everybody likes to participate in class, sadly. And this is kind of, I don't know, I like to continue to find new ways and interesting ways to educate. So I appreciate you giving me a look at the sort of, it's almost like live tweeting or something, right? Like streaming it and doing comments on it and things like that in real time. So I think it could work. I don't know. Thank you though for that. So Chappelle, I chose. It's really hard to pick a Chappelle special that sort of covers all the bases. So I thought, let's take a step back and look at, because we've been talking about this all semester, like the comedian's impact on the world, not just the comedy world. I think that's what one of the takeaways was how important Dave Chappelle is to everybody, not just, you know, the sort of the relatively closed community of comedians. Um, his impact on the culture is widespread, and you know the just the way. I mean, if you only heard what he had to say during the special about comedy and about how it's the last stand against, you know, for free speech, the last safe place to speak your mind. Um, the care with which he talks about and speaks of his profession, this genre, our genre of stand up, um, is it's powerful. It's powerful. It's moving. It's passionate. It's real. It's authentic. Um, and that's what I wanted you guys to see, like that this stuff I've been talking about the whole semester isn't just theoretical. It's not just, you know, in a perfect world. It's real for more people than you think. And I think Chappelle is the the most vocal and prominent arbiter of this idea that stand up is sacred in many ways. And if you go back to the beginning of the semester, stand up comedians, the good ones are the philosophers of our time. Like I believe that. I don't think that's just a cute thing to say. um, so this video is going to be all over the place because it's just a bunch of my uh, kind of, it's more stream of consciousness thoughts about Chappelle um, from that special, right? A lot of you were like, it was just really cool to see so many big names, celebrities coming out to, show their love for him and what he does, and how he's an inspiration, and how he's, a mentor, and, you know, his work in different communities, and, you know, so many people of color being represented. Um, so a lot of you commented on that, and that was why I showed that again instead of just showing one of his specials. I think this gets to the root of comedy, of stand up. This really exposes it for what it means to not just the people who are the purveyors of stand up, but those who consume it and take it, I don't want to say take it seriously, but who I think appreciate it as, the way hopefully you do now, as a site for truth, the search for truth and meaning, in a fucked up, complex world. What are we doing here? Oh, here's one of the things that Chappelle says twice in the show is every point of view has a comedian that reflects it or that represents that, right? He or she might not be the most famous, but every point of view is represented in this world, right? Some are more accessible than others, obviously, but that statement really hit me. I'm like, yes, where else can you see that, across the board? In mainstream media, I don't know. I suppose you can find those things, but it's sort of like, yeah, I think there's a comedian for everybody, so to speak, and you have an advocate, right? Like everybody has an advocate. And when he talks about, it's like a lot of comedians I know are racist, and they do their racist stuff on stage, and everybody laughs, and they're like, I know they mean it, but um, looking past those differences and things like that, and you know, just I think understanding comedy's role in all of this is something that Chappelle really seems to have a grasp on. Um, grasp of, grasp on, grasp of. So yeah, every point of view has a comedian that represents it. Was interesting for sure. Um, Comedy and Chappelle both bring understand he understands that comedy is a way to bring people together, right? People of different belief systems and different races and different ethnicities and sexualities and all these kinds of things. Comedy is this great sort of uniter. It can be if it's implemented properly, um, and it brings people together, right? Uh, Across the board, that's one of its strengths that we really we haven't talked a ton about. Um, um, this the show was about what comedy means to the world. I think I mentioned this just a couple minutes ago, but it's not just what it means to, you know, the audience or the performer. It's what it means to the world, um, as a whole, and that's kind of something I've been driving at all semester a little bit. Like, this stuff that doesn't just exist for us to consume and shit out, right? consume it and shit it out and it's over. It should sort of help us. I don't want to be too grandiose about it, but it should help guide us through life and the world and things like that. Um, you know, the way Chappelle talks about, you know, he tries to incorporate, like his his performing is a celebration of a culture, right? Um, the concert in Brooklyn and the stuff he does in Ohio and like all this stuff, like he's more than just like, oh, I'm gonna do get I'm gonna get $20 million to do a special and take my $20 million and go home. Right? It's just it seems like he's immersed and you know he wants to use his platform, his position to sort of spread not only the culture uh, that he loves and cares about, but you know humor and uh, I told you this video is going to be all over the place because I just wrote down random things. Celebration of a culture, um, humor as survival, where he talks about that having a thick skin. I don't want to live in a country with a brittle spirit. Right? He talks about that. For him, humor was survival, right? And when you grow up feeling that way, there's certainly more at stake for someone like Dave Chappelle or anybody who's been through a minority struggle or a marginalized struggle. And he's sort of saying like humor was his means of survival um, through a lot of hardship. Um, so I thought that was an interesting way to look at things, right? And I like that they jump between the Kennedy Center and then the night before when he's just at the DC Improv at the club and he's kind of just shooting the shit with everybody. But it's what he's talking about. And you can hear the passion in his voice and that he cares and that he cares about you know what he's saying. He's not just up there doing jokes. Like there's more there's more at stake, to use a term that we are familiar with. He talks about stand up being America's last safe place to speak your mind for the First Amendment. It's sacred ground. Um, and again, he speaks of it almost with the reverence that uh, that I think more people should, right? And I've said this from day one with you guys in this class. Like we need to adjust the way we engage with comedy, and we can't continue to just to write it off as silliness, and we need to not take it seriously because that implies that you zap all of the fun out of it, right? It's the whole entertainment versus entertainment enlightenment thing. Everything we do, and comedy's the best way to do that. It's like Bo Burnham, right? Right brain, left brain. Like comedy's the thing that that requires both sides of the brain to you know to function properly. Um, so yeah, like this idea that it's sacred ground, that he's like we're like gladiators. I know that's a little over the top for a metaphor, but um, comedians are like gladiators. They're gladiators and philosophers, and they are many things. And I, I'm still waiting for the culture to catch up and start to acknowledge more universally the power of the comedian, and it is happening, but um, um, Chappelle seems to be at the forefront, and the whole goat discussion, like people love to have the goat discussion, like, oh, who's the greatest of all time. I mean, it's hard to say that Chappelle is, but um, if I think he is, if with, oh man, I say this, I just thought of it, and now I suck at it. You could make a case for him for sure, and I think what might put him over the top is this show that you guys watched, right? And his advocating for humor to be an answer, not just a distraction, right? An answer to a lot of our societal ills and things like that. Um, the way he's a champion for the form and the genre, as it were, um, might might be might put him over the top in the goat conversation. Um, yeah, this is let yourself be surprised, be insightful, intellect, anger, reality. These are all, I don't know, these are all words that I was free associating apparently. Intellect, anger, reality, let yourself be surprised. Um, and he's super insightful, that fearlessness, right? Um, the best comedians are afraid of nothing. Like fearless their pursuit, uh, in their pursuit of truth. That is what fearless means. Fearless doesn't mean like Dice Clay, like I'll say anything for a laugh. Like that's not fearless. The pursuit of truth is needs to be a fearless uh, quest. If you're really looking for it, and if you're really pushing and want to move the needle forward, like yeah, you have to be fearless. Um, he they sneak some stuff in there about representation, and I'm talking about this more in my TV class than with you guys, but we have talked about it a little bit. Like seeing seeing yourself through a very sort of manicured uh, image put out by mainstream media is can be a mind fuck. So Sarah Silverman talks about when Dave moved out to LA and he wanted to see Compton and he went to Compton and was like blown away that people had yards, right? Why? Because his image, and this is pre-internet, obviously, so that makes it a lot different. But his he had a he had an image of what Compton was like, and it was just the urban jungle and gangbangers and fucking drive-bys and all that shit, and getting there and realizing that the reality doesn't, in fact, rarely, probably matches up with the image that we're sold. Um, like he thought, and it ties in with the bit that they showed of his old bit about he. Not, if you've never seen a white person in real life and you just watched TV or whatever, like you would think that all white people are happy, right? Like that was that whole bit about. I just thought every white person was happy, because that's the lens through which he saw the world. That's the lens through which many of us see the world, whether we like it or not. It's generally a white male uh, lens, right? Um, so he, I thought that was an interesting. Um, I thought that was an. I thought that was an interesting little sort of thread that kind of ran through it for a little bit. I'm looking at my notes. It looks like a fucking collage made by like a 13-year-old girl. It's like there's just words like empathy just written there. Empathy, truth. I was like, I'm surprised it doesn't say like sleepover somewhere. So I apologize for that. Empathy and truth are things that I thought of while watching this. um, let me looking at here. Yes. I think who was talking about how Dave's smarter than everyone? Was it Jon Stewart? But that again, that he is that combination of intellect and sense of humor that most people don't associate with each other, right? You don't think of comedians as intellectuals, or we haven't for so long in the past. Um, but the fact this whoever was saying it, I can't remember. Dave is smarter than everyone. He's intellectual. He's the most intellectual comedian of all time. Like, but I don't. I don't necessarily agree or disagree with that, but I think it at least acknowledges his intellectual component of his comedy. And there have been many more before him and and since him, but we need to start making that connection more between those two things. Um, the Lorne Michaels, I thought that was an interesting one. After the 2016 election, Lorne talks about I knew I went to Pryor when we started in 1975 because he was the truth teller, he was the voice, and now 2016, Lorne, I looked to Dave to sort of get his arms around this and give it some perspective. And um, Dave's role as the truth teller, right? Um, and the Toni Morrison quote, like that really hit me. I teared up like several times during this special, just so you guys know. Yeah. So yeah, that I thought Lorne Michaels' little presentation was particularly powerful, talking about again his the importance of comedy to the culture as a whole, right, and humor, and that Dave is the guy. Yeah, he's that guy right now. So I thought that was pretty cool. Um, and then Dave says what I've been saying for years now, right? Stand up is the purest art form, right? It's just one person on the stage in real time in front of people, right? Armed only with his wits, her, her words, um, and his or her opinion and point of view. Like that's all you have. Um, and then he goes on to say, what we know is valuable because of what we do with it, which I thought was a really great way to summarize like a good comedian, right? Good comedy, right? knowing something isn't valuable if you don't share it with other people, or if you can't effectively communicate it to other people. Can't tell you the number of professors I've had that were like legit brilliant people, but couldn't, couldn't do two things. Couldn't explain it to me, who's not a brilliant person, right? And the second thing is couldn't talk about, couldn't really talk intelligently about anything but their area of expertise. Like, that's where a comedian, I think, thrives, is like knowing a lot of shit, right? And being versatile as a communicator and things like that. And trying to make everything funny and meaningful at the same time. Like, you know, there's a versatility that a comedian has that not many other professions do. Um, but what do you do with what you know, right? What do you do with it? You just hoard it and keep it to yourself to be the smartest person to die alone, or do we spread it for the forces of good? I thought that was a good quote. Purest art form, noblest, most noble profession. And there is like, if you haven't gathered yet, like I view it that way. Like, it's noble to be a good comedian and to be out there constantly seeking change and pushing the envelope and, you know, trying to wrap your head around um, all this shit. I don't know why I didn't write down who said these things, but someone was talking about how he cares the most, right? He cares about people, he cares about his community, cares about what people are doing with his comedy and his messages. Um, like, that was the whole Chappelle thing that they talked about his deal, his Comedy Central deal. Now he walked away from $50 million. Why did he? Well, this goes back to integrity and and the purest art form and the noblest profession. Like, he felt he was being misinterpreted, right? People were getting the wrong idea about his sketch show. Like, the show is intended to break down racial stereotypes, expose them for their sort of stupidity, but you can't control like how people interpret your work or interact with it. And he he felt this sort of weight of just like, I'm trying to make a difference and it's just backfiring. Like, too many people were using it to embolden their racist um, rhetoric and ideas because, oh, look, Chappelle's cool with it. He does it on TV every week. So that was a lot. And like I've always made this point when talking about it, like, he could have easily, a lesser man would have said, fuck it, 50 million bucks, I'll do it. I can do 2 more seasons of this show, completely phone it in. But Neil Brennan talking about it talked about how hard that work was and trying to, you know, to be funny and make a difference and all those kinds of things. It's like a lesser man would have taken the money, phoned it in, and it wouldn't have been good. There would have been some funny moments, but it would have been trivial. And Chappelle couldn't do it. He couldn't do it to his, you know, his reputation. He couldn't do it to his community. He couldn't do it. He just, he took a huge hiatus, disappeared to Africa. Um, and I think the way he came back too, I think plays a role in how you can interpret his departure. He came back with this renewed focus on issues, and if you've seen um, any of his comedy since his comeback, it's extremely volatile and honest and raw and truthful and funny. Um, it's almost like I'm not going to let you misconstrue what I'm doing here anymore, right? Because I'm going to come right out and say it. Sketch is a little more nuanced than stand up. Um, so yeah, he cares the most. Like that's a big thing. He talks about understanding who you are, um, evolving, critical thinking, perspective. Use everything you know. Right? Comedy is the only profession where you get to use everything you know if you want to. You can use everything you know. And that was a cool way to look at it. Everyone has a champion. It's this pure American art form. You know, everyone has a champion. That's back to the whole. Everyone has a comedian that represents their point of view. Um, this is the truth, and you are obstructing it. Stand up is the truth, and if you are protesting or trying to cancel somebody, you're obstructing the truth. Not the truth, but this person's truth. And that is an infringement on our rights as human beings. I think that's, he's really pushing for that. Um, he understood the context he was being raised in. When he started talking about his mother and the griot, like that was really cool. And he sort of sees himself as the griot, right? Like, you know, holding on to the stories and the jokes and the the traditions and heritage and spreading them, passing them on to to everybody. Um, that was a cool little anecdote. And then you know the whole sometimes you have to be a lion to be the lamb you really are. Like that, just to wrap everything up, right? Uh, yeah, these battles, you know, are they get fierce sometimes, right? You have to be a lion just to, know, to spread empathy and kindness and understanding and all those kinds of things. So it gets pretty deep. I mean, at least I saw it that way, and I really appreciated your guys' input and hearing what you guys had to say about it too. So, um, yeah, go watch Chappelle. It's usually pays off. Let's put it that way.